Elara Vance had always found solace in the quiet hum of existence, in the gentle turning of a page, in the soft whisper of rain against glass. It was this innate yearning for stillness that had drawn her, 3 years ago, to St. Clement's Cove, a small coastal town nestled against the rugged beauty of the Atlantic. The town, with its winding cobblestone streets and houses painted in shades of sea glass and oyster shell, felt like a secret kept by the tides. Her bookstore, aptly named The Quiet Corner, was the physical manifestation of her soul. It occupied a charming old building, its brick facade softened by decades of sea air, its bay window perpetually misted by the salty spray. Inside, the scent of aged paper and brewing coffee mingled with the faint, sweet aroma of lavender, a scent Elara had deliberately chosen to infuse into the air. Shelves of polished oak stretched to the high ceilings, laden with stories waiting to be discovered, their spines a colorful tapestry of adventures and dreams. In the very heart of the shop, a small cozy cafe offered respite, with mismatched armchairs and a perpetually steaming kettle. Elara herself was a creature of quiet grace. Her hair, the color of burnt caramel, was usually swept up in a loose bun, escaping in soft tendrils around a face that held both a thoughtful serenity and a hint of gentle melancholy. Her eyes, the deep, shifting blue of the ocean on a cloudy day, missed little, observing the world with a patient warmth. She wore comfortable, classic clothes, soft knit sweaters, skirts that swirled when she moved, and her hands, though delicate, were strong and capable, often stained with ink or smelling faintly of vanilla from the coffee beans. Every morning, before the first customer arrived, Elara would make herself a cup of Earl Grey, sweetened with a whisper of honey, and sit by the bay window. She'd watch the town wake up, the fishermen heading to their boats, their weathered faces etched with the wisdom of the sea. Mrs. Gable from the bakery across the street, setting out her trays of freshly baked scones, the occasional gull crying overhead. These were the moments she cherished, the quiet rhythms that had mended parts of her she hadn't known were broken. She'd found a sanctuary here, a place where the noise of a complicated past could finally recede, leaving behind only the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. One blustery Tuesday in early autumn, the kind of day when the sea looked like hammered pewter and the wind rattled the old window panes, Elara was engrossed in cataloging a new collection of antique maps. The bell above the door chimed, a sound she knew intimately, and she looked up, expecting perhaps old Mr. Henderson, who always came in for his daily crossword puzzle and a black coffee, or young Lily, who devoured fantasy novels faster than Elara could restock them. Instead, a man stood just inside the doorway, shaking rain from a worn canvas jacket. He was tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the space, and a quiet presence that immediately drew her attention. His hair was a rich, dark brown, falling loosely across a forehead that suggested thought, and perhaps a touch of worry. A few strands, lighter than the rest, caught the soft light filtering through the window, like threads of spun gold. He had kind eyes, she noted, a deep, warm hazel, that held a depth she found immediately intriguing. His hands, even from a distance, looked strong and capable, the sort that knew how to build or repair, with fingers that seemed long and artistic. He carried with him the scent of rain, damp earth, and something else, something woody and clean, like sawdust and beeswax. He seemed to be taking in the shop, his gaze sweeping over the shelves, lingering on the spines of books with an almost reverent curiosity. He wasn't browsing aimlessly. There was a purpose in his posture, a focused intent. Elara offered a small, welcoming smile. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Can I help you find anything?" He turned, his gaze meeting hers, and a gentle smile touched his lips, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Good morning," he replied, his voice a low, warm baritone, like the cello notes in a piece of classical music. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. It's just, your shop is quite beautiful." Elara felt a faint blush warm her cheeks. "Thank you. We try to make it a haven." "You've succeeded," he said, taking a step further into the shop, his eyes still exploring. "I'm looking for a very specific book, actually. I'm not sure if you'd have it. It's quite old, and probably rather obscure." "Try me," Elara said, moving from behind the counter. She loved a challenge, especially when it involved a rare find. I have a knack for tracking down forgotten stories. He hesitated for a moment, then extracted a small, folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. It's called The Woodworker's Almanac of St. Clement's Cove. It's a collection of local techniques and designs, apparently from the late 19th century. Elara paused, her brow furrowed in thought. The Woodworker's Almanac. That doesn't ring an immediate bell, but it sounds fascinating. For a project? Yes, he confirmed. I'm a furniture restorer. My workshop is just a few streets over, near the old lighthouse. I'm working on a rather intricate piece, a sea chest from a captain's cottage, and it has some unique carvings. A friend mentioned this almanac might have details about local artisans and their specific styles from that period. It would be invaluable for authentic restoration. A furniture restorer, Elara mused. How wonderful! We haven't had one in St. Clement's Cove in years. My name is Elara, by the way. Elara Vance. She extended a hand, and he took it. His grip was firm, warm, and comforting. Finn, he said. Finn O'Connell, it's a pleasure to meet you, Elara. His thumb brushed lightly against her palm as they shook, a small, accidental touch that sent a surprising little tremor through her. Finn O'Connell, she repeated softly, letting the name settle. It suited him, she thought, strong, grounded. Well, Finn, a local woodworking almanac from the late 19th century. That's a true gem if it exists. Most of my local history section is focused on maritime tales and the founding families. But she brightened. I do have a small, very dusty collection of local ephemera, tucked away in the back storeroom. It's not catalogued, a project I keep meaning to tackle. It might be there. You'd be willing to look? He asked, a hopeful note in his voice. Of course, she said. It's the fun part of the job. It might take me a little while, though. It's quite a collection. She gestured vaguely towards the back of the shop, where a narrow door led to what was affectionately known as the abyss. The more an easy way. Finn chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. I understand. I have a similar abyss in my workshop, filled with pieces waiting for their story to be revealed. Perhaps I could help you sort through it, or at least, I could wait here, enjoy a coffee, and not get in your way. Elara considered him. He seemed genuinely interested, not just in the book, but in the process. And his presence, though new, wasn't disruptive. In fact, it was rather calming. A coffee would be lovely, she agreed. And if you wouldn't mind the dust, you're welcome to come back. Sometimes an extra pair of eyes helps. Lead the way, he said, and there was an easy warmth in his smile that made her feel instantly at ease. She led him to the small cafe counter, poured him a steaming mug of her house blend, dark and rich, and offered him a shortbread biscuit. Help yourself to more, she said, gesturing to the plate. Then, with a deep breath, she opened the door to the storeroom. The storeroom was, as she'd understated, quite a collection. Shelves groaned under the weight of forgotten books, stacks of old newspapers, boxes filled with postcards, faded photographs, and the occasional intriguing artifact, a rusty compass, a beautifully carved wooden bird, a collection of seashells. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the single small window. Finn, instead of being daunted, seemed to light up. This is incredible, he murmured, his eyes wide with a sense of wonder. It's like stepping into a time capsule. Elara smiled, pulling on a pair of old gardening gloves. Precisely. It's where the forgotten whispers of St. Clement's Cove reside. We're looking for the Woodworker's Almanac. It might be bound, or perhaps just a pamphlet, or even loose pages in a folder. Keep an eye out for anything with wood or carpentry or local craft in the title. They began to work, a comfortable silence settling between them, broken only by the rustle of paper and the occasional soft cough from Elara as she stirred up dust. Finn was surprisingly meticulous, handling each item with the same care she imagined he'd give a precious antique. He asked questions, not intrusive ones, but curious observations about the items they uncovered. He found a collection of old shipbuilding blueprints, and his eyes gleamed with interest, noting the intricate details. Elara found a box of elegant, handwritten letters from a young woman to her sweetheart, a fisherman lost at sea, and she paused, a pang of shared human experience touching her heart. Hours passed, marked only by the shifting light outside and the growing stack of already looked-through items. They talked about books, about the craftsmanship of older times, about the unique charm of St. Clement's Cove. Ilara found herself telling him about her journey to the town, about seeking a quieter life after years of working in a bustling city publishing house. She didn't delve into the specifics of why she'd needed that quiet, but the implication was there, understood without words. Finn, in turn, spoke of his passion for restoration, of bringing forgotten beauty back to life, and how he too had sought a new beginning in St. Clement's Cove, having grown up here before leaving for years to apprentice and work in larger cities. He'd returned a few months ago, drawn by the familiar scent of the sea and the promise of a slower pace. "It's funny," he said, dusting off an old map of the local fishing grounds. "I always thought I needed the hustle and bustle to be inspired, but there's something about the quiet here, the history in the very stones, that sparks something different, something deeper." "I know exactly what you mean," Ilara replied, carefully placing a fragile lace doily back into a box. "It's not a silence that's empty, but one that's full of stories." As the afternoon light began to wane, casting long shadows across the dusty shelves, Ilara let out a small gasp. "Finn, look." She was holding a rather plain, unassuming volume, its cover a faded dark green cloth, its title embossed in tarnished gold. "The Woodworker's Almanac of St. Clement's Cove, a compendium of local craft, techniques, and designs, 1887. Finn took a step closer, his eyes wide with genuine excitement. "You found it? I can't believe it." He took the book from her, handling it with extreme reverence, turning it over in his hands. "This is truly remarkable, Ilara. Thank you. I honestly didn't expect to find it." "It was hiding in plain sight," she said, a sense of quiet triumph swelling within her. "Right there, under a stack of old shipping manifests. Sometimes the most valuable things are the least flashy." He opened the book carefully, the spine creaking softly. Inside, the pages were filled with intricate drawings of joinery, detailed descriptions of local wood types, and beautiful sketches of furniture pieces, including some that looked remarkably similar to the sea chest he was working on. "This is perfect," he breathed, a genuine joy illuminating his face. "Absolutely perfect. This will allow me to restore that chest with complete authenticity. It's a treasure." "I'm glad I could help," Ilara said, feeling a warmth spread through her. There was a unique satisfaction in connecting someone with the exact book they needed, especially one so specific and meaningful. Finn looked up from the book, his hazel eyes meeting hers. "Ilara, I can't thank you enough. How much do I owe you for this?" She waved a hand. "For finding it, nothing. It was a pleasure to uncover. For the book itself, let me look it up. It's a rare find, but it's been in the storeroom for decades. I'll give you a fair price." He nodded, still smiling. "You're too kind. I insist on paying for your time at least. And the coffee. Can I buy you a coffee, or perhaps something more substantial sometime soon, as a proper thank you?" Ilara felt her heart give a little flutter. It had been a long time since anyone had asked her out for anything that wasn't strictly professional. Her life in St. Clement's Cove had been intentionally insular, focused on healing and rebuilding. But Finn's invitation felt different, gentle and sincere, not demanding. "I'd like that, Finn," she said, her voice a little softer than she intended. "I'd like that very much." He closed the book carefully, holding it like a precious artifact. "Excellent. How about Thursday evening? The Sea Breeze Bistro has excellent clam chowder." "Thursday sounds perfect," she confirmed, a genuine smile gracing her lips. The thought of it, a quiet dinner with Finn, discussing old books and old wood, filled her with a surprising sense of anticipation. It was a new feeling, a gentle stirring in the quiet corners of her heart, a warmth that promised something more than just stillness. It promised a story, perhaps. As Finn left, the bell chiming behind him, the evening light painting the street in hues of rose and lavender, Ilara stood amidst the lingering dust of the storeroom, the scent of old paper and wood still in the air. She found herself humming a little tune, something she hadn't done in ages. The quiet hum of existence in St. Clement's Cove suddenly felt a little less solitary, a little more shared. She looked out the window, at the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to prick through, and wondered what new chapters the gentle rhythms of her town and the unexpected arrival of Finn O'Connell might bring. The quiet hum stayed with her as she locked the shop, the old brass bell jingling a familiar, comforting tune that now seemed to carry a new resonance. The air outside was cool and crisp, carrying the unmistakable scent of the ocean, a mix of salt, kelp, and something indefinably wild. Elara pulled her shawl tighter, her gaze still fixed on the horizon where the last blush of sunset faded into the deepening indigo. Finn O'Connell. The name felt like a gentle ripple in the still waters of her routine. He was a disarming man with eyes that held a surprising depth and a smile that seemed to promise easy laughter. Back in her small apartment above the shop, the familiar rituals of evening unfolded, yet they felt subtly altered. She put on the kettle, the soft hiss of the water a soothing counterpoint to the quiet hum in her mind. As she prepared a simple meal of clam chowder and crusty bread, she found herself replaying their brief interactions. The way his brow had furrowed in concentration when she described the specific type of antique hinge he might need. The way his laughter had filled the dusty storeroom, chasing away the shadows. The unexpected warmth that had spread through her when Haida offered to help. Elara rarely lingered on thoughts of strangers. Her life in St. Clement's Cove was a carefully constructed sanctuary, built on the steady rhythm of her shop, her books, and the predictable ebb and flow of the tides. After her parents' passing years ago, she had retreated into herself, finding solace in the quiet solitude of her inherited life. She loved her town, its history, its stubborn resistance to the relentless march of time, but she had learned to keep her heart carefully guarded. Yet, Finn O'Connell had, in a matter of minutes, nudged open a small window in that sanctuary. She poured her tea, a delicate jasmine blend, and settled into her favorite armchair by the window. The stars were truly out now, glittering like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The lighthouse, a silent sentinel at the cove's edge, stood dark and majestic against the night sky. She wondered what it looked like through Finn's eyes, an architect's eyes. A canvas for possibility, perhaps. For Elara, it was a monument to memory, to the past, to the generations of her family who had lived and breathed the sea. Her great-grandfather had been one of its last keepers, his stories etched into her earliest memories. She slept fitfully, dreams of lighthouses and laughing eyes mingling with the familiar sounds of the sea. The next morning, Elara rose with the sun, the lingering hum still a soft melody in her heart. She went through her usual routine, a cup of strong coffee, a quick tidy of the shop before opening, a moment to watch the fishing boats head out. But today, the familiar sights and sounds felt sharper, more vibrant. The air itself seemed to crackle with an unspoken energy. By mid-morning, the whispers began. Mrs. Gable, a woman whose life revolved around the town's grapevine, stopped by for a spool of thread. "Heard you had a visitor yesterday, dear," she said, her eyes twinkling with barely contained curiosity. "The new gentleman, Mr. O'Connell, isn't it? From the city, they say." Elara offered a non-committal smile. "He was looking for some building supplies, Mrs. Gable." "Building supplies indeed," Mrs. Gable mused, her gaze sweeping around the meticulously organized shop as if searching for clues. "He's staying at the old Mariner's Rest Inn. Heard he's here about the lighthouse. Big plans, apparently. Changing things, they say." Her tone was a blend of apprehension and excitement, a common St. Clement's Cove reaction to anything new. Elara felt a familiar tightness in her chest at the mention of changing things. The lighthouse was sacred. "The lighthouse needs a lot of work," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "It's been neglected for years." Mrs. Gable nodded, then leaned in conspiratorially. "He's a handsome one, though, isn't he? And those eyes. So kind. Not like some of those city folk who come here just to gawk at our quaintness." She gave Elara a knowing look before finally purchasing her thread. Throughout the morning, other customers echoed similar sentiments. Fisherman Silas Finch, gruff and usually taciturn, grumbled about outsiders meddling with our history, but then admitted he seemed like a decent sort for an architect. Even young Lily, who delivered the morning paper, paused to ask, "Is Mr. O'Connell really going to fix the lighthouse, Elara? It would be so cool to go inside." Elara found herself defending Finn, even in his absence, a protective instinct she hadn't realized she possessed. He wasn't meddling, he was assessing. He wasn't gawking, he was observing. She realized she was already seeing him differently, not just as a customer, but as a person, and one who was making an impression. It was just after lunch, when the bell above the door jingled again, and there he was. Finn O'Connell, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder, a polite smile on his face. He looked less dusty today, his dark hair a little tidier, his eyes bright. He wore a simple plaid shirt that suited the rustic charm of the cove. "Good afternoon, Alara," he said, his voice a warm balm in the quiet shop. "I hope I'm not disturbing your peace." "Not at all, Finn," she replied, surprised by the ease with which his name rolled off her tongue. "Welcome back. Did you find what you needed elsewhere?" He shook his head. "Not quite. Turns out, your assessment of the local hardware store was spot on. They had the basics, but nothing close to what I need for the more intricate details of the lighthouse. I was hoping you might have had a chance to look for those hinges, or perhaps some of the old brass fittings I mentioned." Ilara felt a thrill of quiet satisfaction. "I did, actually. After you left, I went through some of the old ledgers and found a few things. Come with me." She led him back into the storeroom, the air still carrying the ghost of their previous encounter. She pointed to a small wooden crate she pulled out. "These are from a batch my grandfather ordered decades ago for a renovation project at the old town hall. They're not identical to what you described, but they're solid brass, hand-forged, and might serve as a good template if you're commissioning new ones." She held up a heavy, ornate hinge, its surface dulled by time but its craftsmanship undeniable. Finn took it from her, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment that sent a shiver up her arm. He turned the hinge over in his palm, his expression one of genuine appreciation. "These are exquisite, Alara. Far better than anything I could find pre-made. You have a treasure trove here." He looked at her, his smile gentle. "Thank you. This is a huge help." "My pleasure," she said, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I enjoy digging through the archives. It's like stepping back in time." "I can imagine," he said, his gaze lingering on an old leather-bound volume on a nearby shelf. "It's something I admire about this place, and about you, if I may say so. You honor the past." His words resonated deeply with Ilara. "It's important," she said softly. "The past informs the present, especially in a place like St. Clement's Cove. The lighthouse, for instance. It's more than just a structure. It's a symbol of guidance, of resilience, of home." Finn nodded, his expression serious. "I couldn't agree more. That's precisely why I took on this project. It's not just about restoring a building, it's about preserving a legacy. The company I work for, O'Connell & Sons, specializes in historical restoration. We don't just fix things, we try to understand their soul." He paused, a thoughtful look on his face. "In fact, I was hoping you might be willing to share some of that legacy with me. Your family has such deep roots here, particularly with the lighthouse. I've been doing some research at the town hall, but first-hand accounts, local legends, they're invaluable." Alara hesitated. Sharing her family's stories, her connection to the lighthouse, felt intensely personal. It was a part of her she rarely exposed. But Finn's earnestness, his genuine respect, was disarming. "What kind of stories are you looking for?" she asked, a tentative curiosity stirring within her. "Anything, really. What it was like when it was active, the people who worked there, even just the way the town remembers it. I want to ensure that whatever we propose for its future, it respects its past." He leaned against a stack of old lumber, his presence easy and unobtrusive in the cluttered space. "I'm not here to turn it into some generic tourist attraction, Alara. I want to bring it back to life, to make it a source of pride for the community again, perhaps even a place that can serve the community in a new way, while still honoring its original purpose." His words struck a chord. "A source of pride," she repeated, almost to herself. It had been a source of quiet sorrow for her, seeing it fall into disrepair. "My great-grandfather, Thomas, was one of the last keepers. He used to tell me stories about the storms, the ships he guided in, the camaraderie among the keepers." A small, wistful smile touched her lips. "He used to say the lighthouse had a heartbeat, a steady thrum that pulsed through the whole cove." Finn's eyes lit up. "A heartbeat? That's beautiful. That's the kind of detail I need. Would you perhaps be willing to tell me more over dinner? My treat, of course. Tonight, or another evening that suits you better." The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and exhilarating. Alara hadn't had dinner with anyone outside her small circle of elderly neighbors in years. Her first instinct was to politely decline, citing shop duties or a prior engagement, which would be a lie. But then she remembered the hum, the unexpected warmth, the feeling of something new unfurling within her. And she remembered Finn's kind eyes, his genuine interest. I would like that, Finn, she found herself saying, a blush creeping up her neck. Tonight sounds lovely. There's a small place down by the harbor, the Salty Siren, that does excellent fish and chips. A genuine, wide smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. The Salty Siren. Perfect. Shall we say 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, she confirmed, her heart doing a little flutter she hadn't felt in a very long time. After Finn left, promising to return later for the hinges, Alara found herself in a delightful daze. She spent the rest of the afternoon arranging merchandise, but her mind was elsewhere, flitting between memories of her great-grandfather and anticipatory thoughts of the evening. What should she wear? It wasn't a formal date, just dinner, but still, she caught herself humming again, a brighter, more confident tune this time. At 7 o'clock, Alara walked down to the Salty Siren, the sea breeze ruffling her hair. She had chosen a simple, dark blue dress that complemented her eyes, and a silver locket, a gift from her mother, around her neck. Finn was already there, standing outside, looking out at the harbor where the fishing boats bobbed gently. He turned as he heard her approach, and his eyes lit up. Alara, you look wonderful, he said, a sincerity in his voice that made her blush again. Thank you, Finn. You look rather dashing yourself, she replied, noting his crisp linen shirt. Inside, the Salty Siren was cozy and bustling, filled with the aroma of fried fish and the convivial chatter of locals. They found a small table by the window, offering a view of the darkening harbor. Over steaming plates of fish and chips, Alara found herself opening up to Finn in a way she hadn't expected. She told him about Thomas, her great-grandfather, a man whose hands smelled perpetually of salt and whale oil, whose eyes held the wisdom of countless storms. She described the rhythmic clang of the fog bell on misty days, the powerful sweep of the light beam across the water, a silent promise of safety. She spoke of the isolation, too, that came with being a lighthouse keeper, but also the deep connection to the elements. Finn listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed he wasn't just being polite, but genuinely absorbing every detail. So, the original lens was a Fresnel lens, wasn't it? He asked, his architect's mind connecting the dots. A third order, perhaps? Exactly, Alara confirmed, impressed. It was quite magnificent. My great-grandfather polished it every day until it gleamed like a jewel. It must have been heartbreaking for the family when the lighthouse was automated, Finn observed gently. Alara nodded, a shadow passing over her features. It was the end of an era, for the town, and for my family. My great-grandfather retired soon after. He felt adrift without his purpose. She paused, then added, That's why seeing it now, neglected. Finn reached across the table, his hand briefly covering hers. The touch was light, reassuring. I understand, Alara. Believe me, I do. My own family business started with my grandfather, a stonemason. He taught my father, who taught me. There's a deep respect for heritage in our blood. I promise you, any plans we put forward for the lighthouse will be handled with the utmost care and reverence for its history. He then shared a little about himself. His company, O'Connell and Sons, had restored historical buildings all over Ireland before expanding to the U.S. He spoke of the challenge and reward of bringing old structures back to life, of uncovering their hidden stories. He mentioned growing up near the coast in County Clare, the wild Atlantic winds shaping his own childhood, giving him a particular affinity for coastal architecture. So, you're quite used to the sea then, Alara remarked, a smile playing on her lips. St. Clement's Cove won't be too much of a shock for you. He laughed, a rich, warm sound. Not at all. There's a certain peace to it, isn't there? A sense of time moving at a different pace. It's a welcome change from the city. He looked out the window at the dark expanse of the sea. It reminds me a little of home. As the evening drew to a close, a comfortable camaraderie had settled between them. They talked of books, of quiet passions, of the simple pleasures of life. Alara found herself laughing more easily than she had in years, her guard slowly but surely dissolving in the warmth of Finn's presence. When he walked her back to the shop, the moon was high, casting silver light over the cobblestone street. Thank you for tonight, Alara, he said, stopping at her door. It was truly enlightening and delightful. Thank you, Finn, she replied, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a long time. I enjoyed it immensely. He lingered for a moment, his gaze soft. I have a meeting with the town council tomorrow morning to present some initial ideas for the lighthouse. It's still very early stages, of course, but I'd be very grateful for your input as things progress. Your insights are valuable. I'd be happy to help in any way I can, she said, genuinely meaning it. The idea of being involved, of helping to shape the future of the lighthouse while honoring its past, was surprisingly appealing. Excellent, he said, a genuine smile gracing his lips. Perhaps we could even take a walk up to the lighthouse sometime soon. I'd love to hear memories of it, standing right there. The thought of walking to the lighthouse with Finn, sharing her most treasured memories with him, sent a flutter through her. It felt like a significant step, a crossing of a threshold she hadn't known she was approaching. I'd like that very much, she said, her voice soft. He nodded, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than strictly necessary, a silent promise passing between them. Good night, Alara. Good night, Finn. She watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the shadows of the street. As she unlocked her door, the old brass bell jingled, but this time it sang a clear, joyful tune. The quiet hum in her heart had deepened, growing into a gentle melody that promised new harmonies. The gentle rhythms of St. Clement's Cove were indeed changing, and Alara found herself not just observing, but actively anticipating the next beat. The lighthouse, once a symbol of her solitude, now seemed to shimmer with the light of new possibilities, its ancient stones quietly awaiting a future that suddenly felt a little less solitary, a little more. The lighthouse, once a symbol of her solitude, now seemed to shimmer with the light of new possibilities, its ancient stones quietly awaiting a future that suddenly felt a little less solitary, a little more shared. The word shared resonated deep within her, a soft echo in the quiet of her tower. She stood at the window, the sea a restless canvas of blues and grays below, the beam of her lighthouse already cutting its familiar arc across the twilight sky. For so long, her life had been a carefully curated solitude, a sanctuary built of silence and routine. The lighthouse was her anchor, her purpose, a steadfast beacon in a world she had intentionally kept at arm's length. Yet, Liam had, with surprising ease, slipped past those carefully constructed barriers. He hadn't stormed them. He had simply walked through an open door she hadn't even realized was there. The memory of his smile, the crinkle at the corners of his eyes, the warmth of his hand on hers as he'd helped her with the lantern, sent a gentle shiver through her. It wasn't a shiver of cold or fear, but of anticipation, a thrilling flutter she hadn't felt in years, perhaps never with such clarity. It was the feeling of a dormant seed finally stirring, reaching for the sun. She picked up her phone, a device usually reserved for practical matters, weather reports, supply orders. Her finger hovered over his name in her contact. Iliam. A simple name, yet it now held a weight of meaning. Should she text him? What would she say? Thank you for the coffee. Why, she enjoyed our conversation? Both felt inadequate for the seismic shift occurring within her. Just as she hesitated, her phone vibrated. A message from Liam. Her breath caught. Liam, hope you made it back okay. The light looks particularly bright tonight. Good job, Alara. Warren. A small smile touched her lips. He hadn't just noticed her, he'd noticed her work, her dedication to the lighthouse. It was a subtle acknowledgement that spoke volumes. Gilara, I did. Thank you. And thank you for the coffee. It was just what I needed. Israel. She sent it, a little bolder than she felt. A moment later, another message. Killiam, any chance you'd be free for another coffee or maybe something stronger, sometime this week? I could bring some fresh pastries from Mrs. Henderson's bakery. Then. Her heart gave a joyful leap. Mrs. Henderson's pastries were legendary in St. Clement's Cove. It was a charming, thoughtful offer, mixing a casual invitation with a practical, local touch. Gilara, I'd like that very much, Liam. What day were you thinking? One night. And so, it began, not with a grand declaration or a dramatic gesture, but with the quiet, steady rhythm of two people slowly, tentatively, reaching for each other. Their next meeting was less a date and more a collaboration, which Alara found suited her perfectly. Liam had arrived with a toolbox and a concerned frown. "I noticed a slight wobble in the weather vane when I passed by this morning," he'd explained, gesturing towards the very top of the lighthouse. "And the salt spray can be brutal on the metalwork up there. Thought I might take a look if you wouldn't mind." Alara, who usually handled all repairs herself, felt a pang of something akin to relief. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, but the thought of having a second set of hands, a second perspective, felt unexpectedly comforting. "I'd appreciate that, Liam," she'd said, a genuine smile gracing her features. "It's been on my list, but getting a good window between squalls can be tricky." Together, they ascended the winding stairs, the rhythmic clang of their boots on the metal steps, a new companionable sound in the usually solitary ascent. Liam moved with an easy grace, his broad shoulders filling the narrow space, his presence warm and reassuring. At the top, amidst the bracing sea air, they worked in comfortable silence for a while, Liam expertly assessing the vane, tightening bolts, and applying a protective sealant, while Alara handed him tools and pointed out areas of concern she'd noticed. As they worked, their conversation flowed easily. They talked about the history of the lighthouse, about the generations of keepers who had tended its flame. Liam shared stories of his days as a carpenter in the city, the demanding pace, the impersonal nature of high-rise construction, and the quiet satisfaction he now found in restoring antique furniture. "It's funny," he mused, wiping grease from his hands with a rag Alara offered. "I thought I'd miss the hustle, the excitement. But there's a different kind of excitement here, isn't there? In the rhythm of the tides, the challenge of coaxing life back into something old and beautiful." He gestured to the lighthouse structure around them. "Like this grand old lady." Alara nodded, gazing out at the endless expanse of sea and sky. "Exactly. It's a grounded kind of joy, a deeper kind of purpose." She found herself telling him about her own journey, her escape from a demanding, unfulfilling corporate job, her yearning for something real, tangible. She spoke of the quiet grief for a life she'd left behind, and the unexpected peace she'd found here, tending the light her grandmother had once tended. It was more than she'd shared with anyone since arriving in St. Clement's Cove. Liam listened, his gaze steady and warm, never interrupting, only offering soft, encouraging hums of understanding. When she finished, a comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the cry of gulls and the distant crash of waves. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said finally, his voice soft. "You've clearly put your heart into this place." His words touched a chord deep within her. It was a validation she hadn't consciously sought, but one she realized she desperately needed. The feeling of being truly seen, truly understood, was a rare and precious gift. That evening, after Liam had meticulously cleaned his tools and tidied the small workshop, Alara found herself doing something she hadn't done for a visitor in years. She invited him to stay for dinner. "I've got a pot of seafood chowder simmering," she offered, a blush rising on her cheeks. "It's more than enough for one." Liam's smile was immediate and genuine. "I'd love to, Alara. Lead the way." They ate in her cozy kitchen, the scent of the sea still clinging faintly to their clothes. The chowder, rich with local fish and cream, was delicious, and Liam praised it enthusiastically. The conversation flowed as easily as it had earlier, shifting from lighthearted anecdotes about village life to more thoughtful discussions about dreams and aspirations. Alara learned about Liam's quiet ambition to expand his carpentry shop, perhaps even teach workshops one day. He spoke of his parents who still lived in the city, and his close-knit group of friends he missed but knew he'd made the right choice in moving away. "It's a different kind of success here, isn't it?" he mused, stirring his coffee. "Not about climbing the ladder, but about building something lasting, something with soul." "And connection," Alara added softly, looking at him across the table. "I think that's what I craved most, genuine connection, away from the superficiality of, well, everything else." He met her gaze, and in his eyes, she saw an understanding that transcended words. It was a silent affirmation, a recognition of a shared journey, even if their paths had been different. The hum in her heart deepened, a quiet, insistent melody. Later, as the evening deepened and the lighthouse beam began its lonely vigil, they moved to the small sitting room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls lined with books and nautical charts. Alara, emboldened by the warmth of the fire and the comforting presence of Liam, found herself opening up even further. She spoke of her fear of loneliness, even as she embraced solitude. She admitted that sometimes, the vastness of the sea, the weight of the lighthouse's responsibility, could feel overwhelming. Liam listened, his head tilted slightly, his expression one of profound empathy. When she paused, he reached across the small space between them and gently took her hand. His touch was warm, firm, and infinitely comforting. "It's okay to feel that, Alara," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "It just means you're human, and it means you care deeply about this place, about what you do. But you don't have to carry it all alone." He squeezed her hand gently. No one should. In that moment, a dam she hadn't even realized was there seemed to crack. A wave of emotion, a mix of relief and vulnerability, washed over her. She looked at their joined hands, then back at his kind, earnest face. The light from the fire flickered, making his eyes gleam with a gentle intensity. The simple act of holding hands felt monumental, a silent promise in the quiet of her home. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened with a natural, unhurried pace, much like the tide slowly pulling back from the shore. Liam became a regular fixture in Alara's life, his visits a welcome punctuation to her routine. He'd often stop by with a thermos of coffee and a warm pastry in the mornings, just as she was finishing her logbook entries. They'd share a quiet breakfast, talking about the weather, the latest news from the cove, or simply enjoying the companionable silence. He'd help her with small repairs around the lighthouse, or simply sit with her as she knitted, reading a book while the sea roared outside. The villagers naturally noticed. St. Clement's Cove was a small, close-knit community, where everyone knew everyone else's business, usually before it happened. Mrs. Henderson, the bakery owner, would give Alara a knowing wink when she saw her in the shop, or slip an extra shortbread into her bag. Old man Fitzwilliam, who ran the fishing charter, would wave a little more enthusiastically from his boat. Alara, accustomed to being an intriguing, but ultimately private, figure in the cove, found herself feeling a little self-conscious under the gentle scrutiny. One Saturday, Liam suggested they walk into the village for the weekly farmers' market. "Mrs. Peterson has the freshest mussels this time of year," he'd said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "And there's usually a local musician playing." Alara hesitated. The market was always bustling, a vibrant hub of gossip and camaraderie. She loved the market, but she usually went early before the crowds, or sent a list with one of the fishing boats. The thought of walking through it with Liam, their burgeoning relationship on quiet display, brought a blush to her cheeks. "I usually go early," she mumbled, looking down at her hands. "It gets quite busy." Liam sensed her unease immediately. He didn't push, didn't question. Instead, he simply reached out and gently lifted her chin with his finger, meeting her gaze. "It's okay, Alara," he said softly. "If you'd rather not, we don't have to. We could just stay here and I could make us some mussels later if you'd like, or we could just take a walk down the beach, whatever you're comfortable with." His understanding, his quiet respect for her boundaries, was exactly what she needed. It wasn't that she didn't want to be seen with him. It was just the sudden transition from years of careful privacy to the open gaze of the community. It felt exposed. But his patience, his willingness to step back and let her set the pace, reassured her. A small smile touched her lips. "No," she said, her voice firmer this time. "No, I'd like to go. With you." She took a deep breath. "It's just new, being out like this, with someone." Liam's smile was gentle. "I know," he said, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. "It's new for me too, in a way. But I promise, I'm a pretty good buffer against curious stares. And besides," he added, a mischievous glint in his eyes, "who can resist Mrs. Peterson's muscles?" They walked hand in hand down the winding path from the lighthouse to the village, a path Alara had walked alone countless times. Today, however, with Liam's steady presence beside her, the journey felt different. The air tasted saltier, the colors of the village brighter, the distant laughter from the market more inviting. When they arrived, the market was indeed bustling, a kaleidoscope of sights and sounds. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the briny scent of the sea, and a lively fiddle tune drifted from a makeshift stage. Ilara felt a few pairs of eyes turn their way, a few knowing smiles exchanged. But with Liam's hand warm in hers, his shoulder brushing hers, the self-consciousness slowly began to fade, replaced by a surprising sense of rightness. She found herself smiling back at Mrs. Henderson, nodding to old man Fitzwilliam. She was no longer just Ilara, the solitary lighthouse keeper. She was Ilara, and she was with Liam. And it felt good. More than good, it felt like coming home in a way she hadn't realized was possible. As autumn deepened into winter, the rhythm of St. Clement's Cove shifted. The sea grew wilder, the winds more biting, and the days shorter. The lighthouse became even more vital, its beam a steadfast guide through the long, stormy nights. Ilara in turn found her reliance on Liam growing, not out of need, but out of a shared comfort and mutual support. One particularly fierce storm swept in from the North Atlantic, lashing the coast with torrential rain and gale-force winds. The old lighthouse groaned and shuddered, a testament to its ancient strength. But the relentless battering was enough to fray even Ilara's nerves. The power flickered, then died, plunging the lantern room into a momentary terrifying darkness before the backup generator kicked in with a guttural roar. Liam, who had been working in his shop in the village, had called her the moment the storm truly hit. "Are you all right up there, Ilara? The wind sounds like a banshee." "I'm fine," she'd shouted over the wind's howl, trying to sound braver than she felt. "The generator's on, just a bit lively." "I'm coming over," he'd declared, no room for argument in his voice. "I'll bring candles, and a thermos of hot cocoa, and maybe some extra blankets, just in case." True to his word, Liam arrived an hour later, soaked to the bone, but with a determined glint in his eyes. He carried a rucksack, his presence a solid anchor against the storm's fury. He spent the evening with her in the lantern room, checking the mechanisms, offering quiet reassurance, his hand resting on her arm whenever a particularly violent gust shook the tower. They huddled together by the old potbelly stove in the keeper's quarters, sipping hot cocoa as the storm raged outside. The generator hummed steadily, a reassuring counterpoint to the wind's shriek. Liam had brought a small battery-powered radio, and they listened to the emergency broadcasts, interspersed with classical music, a strange calm amidst the chaos. "It's beautiful, in a way, isn't it?" Ilara murmured, watching the rain streak down the thick glass of the lantern room, distorting the world outside into a watery blur. "The raw power of it." Liam nodded, his arm instinctively wrapping around her shoulders, drawing her closer. "It is, but it's even better when you're not facing it alone." She leaned into his warmth, her head resting against his shoulder. The scent of rain and sea, mingled with his subtle, earthy scent, filled her senses. In that moment, surrounded by the storm, she felt safer, more at peace, than she had in years. The lighthouse, her sanctuary, felt transformed. It was no longer just a place of solitude and duty, it was a home, and it was capable of holding not just her, but Rhine. The morning after the storm, the world seemed scrubbed clean. The air was crisp and fresh, the sky a brilliant, almost impossibly blue. The sea, though still churning from the storm's aftermath, sparkled under the nascent sun. Ilara and Liam stood at the top of the lighthouse, surveying the calm. "No major damage, thankfully," Liam observed, his gaze sweeping over the landscape. "Just a few fallen branches to clear on the path." Ilara didn't respond immediately. She was watching the sun climb higher, painting the clouds with hues of rose and gold. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the lighthouse's resilience, but for the man standing beside her. He had become, quietly and without fanfare, an indispensable part of her life. He understood her love for this place, her need for purpose, and he respected her independence, while also offering his steady, unwavering support. She turned to him, a soft, open smile on her face. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice barely a whisper against the lingering breeze. "For everything." He smiled back, a warmth in his eyes that mirrored the sunrise. "Always, Ilara. Always. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed a strand of hair from her face, and for a long moment, they simply stood there, gazing into each other's eyes. The unspoken words hung in the air, potent and clear. A future awaited them, a future built on shared strength, quiet understanding, and a love that was as deep and constant as the tide. It was a promise that resonated in the quiet corners of her heart, a melody that sang of belonging, of connection, of a life unfolding in the most wonderful, unexpected ways. The weeks that followed solidified this feeling. Their mornings often began with Liam arriving at the lighthouse, sometimes with fresh coffee, sometimes just with a smile and a quiet good morning, a silent acknowledgement of the new day they would share. They started a tradition of walking the beach together every Sunday afternoon, collecting sea glass and smooth pebbles, talking about their week, about their dreams. Elara found herself sharing details of her day with him, the smallest observations about the seabirds, the progress of a ship on the horizon, the shifting patterns of the clouds. And Liam, in turn, spoke of his projects, the satisfaction of a perfectly mitered joint, the challenge of restoring a particularly intricate piece of furniture. Their lives, once distinct and separate, were now gracefully intertwined, like two currents merging into a stronger, more beautiful flow. One crisp afternoon, as they sat on the bench overlooking the cove, watching the fishing boats return, Liam turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he began, tracing patterns on the sand with a stick, "I've been thinking, this lighthouse, it's more than just a light, isn't it? It's a landmark, a symbol. What if we could find a way to share its history, its beauty, with more people? Maybe occasional tours, or a small exhibition of artifacts from its past." Elara's eyes widened, a spark of excitement igniting within her. It was an idea she had toyed with in the quiet hours, a way to connect her solitary duty with the community she was growing to love. But she had never dared to voice it, fearing it might disrupt the sanctity of her role. But hearing it from Liam, seeing the genuine enthusiasm in his eyes, made it feel not just possible, but exciting. I've thought about it too," she confessed, her voice soft with surprise and delight. "But I never knew where to begin, or if it was even allowed." Liam grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. "That's where I come in. I'm pretty good at planning, and I know a fair few people in the Preservation Society. We could research its history, restore some of the old keeper's tools. Imagine, Elara, showing people what you do, what your grandmother did, connecting the past to the present." Elara looked from Liam's eager face to the ancient, majestic lighthouse, its white stone gleaming in the afternoon sun. The idea, once a distant, solitary thought, now felt vibrant and alive, a joint venture that perfectly blended their passions. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about sharing their love for this place, for this life, with the world around them. A warm, expansive feeling bloomed in her chest. The lighthouse, once a beacon of her solitary existence, was now poised to become a shared legacy, a testament to a love that was both deeply personal and beautifully communal. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cove, Elara reached for Liam's hand, lacing her fingers through his. The future, with all its uncharted waters, suddenly felt like the most exciting adventure of all. And she knew with absolute certainty that with Liam by her side, she was ready for every single beat. Elara's fingers tightened around Liam's, a silent promise passing between them, as the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and violet. The air grew cooler, carrying the familiar scent of salt and pine, but Elara felt a warmth radiating from Liam's presence that chased away any chill. Their initial conversations about the lighthouse had been a gentle dance of ideas, each respecting the other's vision while weaving them together. Liam, with his developer's eye for potential and his newfound respect for heritage, saw the possibilities of restoration and sustainable use. Elara, with her deep love for its history and her desire to honor its purpose, envisioned it as a heart for the community, a place of gathering and remembrance, not merely a tourist attraction. The first step was to present their idea to the cove's small but close-knit community. It wasn't a formal town hall meeting, but rather a series of informal chats over coffee at the Salty Siren Cafe and an evening gathering at the community hall. Elara, usually reserved, found a newfound confidence with Liam by her side. He spoke eloquently about the lighthouse's historical significance, its potential for educational programs, and how a restored multi-purpose space could benefit local artists, small businesses, and create a shared gathering point. Elara, in turn, spoke from the heart about the lighthouse's soul, its silent vigil over generations, and her dream of seeing it rekindled as a symbol of hope and connection for the cove. There were questions, of course. Concerns about funding, about change, about preserving the quiet charm of their home. But Liam had come prepared, having already sketched out preliminary plans for grants and community-led fundraising. He proposed a Friends of the Cove Lighthouse initiative, where locals could contribute time, skills, or donations. Elara, meanwhile, emphasized that the core essence of the lighthouse, its history, its peace, would be preserved, even enhanced. She spoke of turning the keeper's cottage into a small museum showcasing the cove's maritime history, and the lantern room into an observation deck accessible to all, not just a select few. Slowly, carefully, skepticism gave way to curiosity, then to genuine enthusiasm. Old Man Hemlock, a retired fisherman known for his gruff exterior, surprised everyone by offering his carpentry skills. Mrs. Gable, the town's unofficial historian, volunteered to curate exhibits for the museum. The idea, once a whisper between Elara and Liam, began to gather momentum, fueled by the collective spirit of the cove. The lighthouse renovation became a summer-long passion project for the entire town. Liam, true to his word, spearheaded the professional restoration of the tower itself, ensuring its structural integrity and historical accuracy. But it was the interior of the keeper's cottage, and the surrounding grounds, that truly became a community effort. Elara and Liam worked side by side, sanding old floorboards, patching plaster, and painting walls in soothing coastal hues. Liam, surprisingly adept with a paintbrush, would often tease Elara about her meticulousness, only to admire the perfect lines she achieved. They shared thermos coffee and packed lunches, their conversations flowing effortlessly from blueprints to childhood memories, from the challenges of the day to the dreams of tomorrow. One afternoon, covered in dust and paint, they sat on the newly installed porch swing of the keeper's cottage, watching the waves crash against the shore. "You know," Liam said, his voice soft, "I came here to build something new, something modern." He turned to Elara, his blue eyes warm with emotion. "You taught me that some things aren't meant to be replaced but rediscovered. That true value isn't always in what's next, but in what endures." Elara leaned her head on his shoulder, a profound sense of peace settling over her. "And you," she murmured, "you showed me that even the most enduring things need a fresh perspective, a new hand to guide them into the future. That solitary strength can be even more powerful when it's shared." Their love, like the lighthouse, was being built and rebuilt with every shared laugh, every quiet understanding, every challenge overcome. Elara found herself opening up in ways she never thought possible, sharing not just her thoughts but her deepest feelings, her fears, and her hopes. Liam listened, truly listened, offering not solutions, but unwavering support, and a gentle presence that made her feel utterly safe. He was the anchor she hadn't known she needed, and she, he confided one starlit night, was the compass that had finally pointed him home. As autumn painted the trees in fiery golds and deep crimsons, the lighthouse project neared completion. The old keeper's cottage, once a dusty shell, now gleamed with renewed purpose. It housed a small, beautifully curated museum on the ground floor, detailing the lives of past keepers and the maritime history of the cove. Upstairs, a versatile community space had been created, complete with a small kitchenette and comfortable seating, ready to host anything from local art classes to book clubs, or even intimate acoustic concerts. The lantern room, freshly polished and gleaming, offered breathtaking panoramic views of the ocean and the rugged coastline. The grand opening was a joyous affair. The entire cove turned out, along with visitors from neighboring towns. Elara, standing next to Liam on the newly paved path leading to the lighthouse, watched as families explored the museum, children gasped at the views from the lantern room, and old friends reconnected over coffee in the community space. The air buzzed with laughter and conversation, a vibrant symphony that filled the silence the lighthouse had once held. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting a golden glow over the scene, Liam gently pulled Alara aside, leading her to a secluded spot behind the keeper's cottage, overlooking a hidden stretch of beach. The roar of the ocean was a familiar lullaby, and the lighthouse stood tall against the endless sky, a testament to their shared dream. He turned to her, his hands gently cupping her face. "Alara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "this lighthouse, it's more than just a building now. It's a symbol of what we can create together. Of what we can create together. A place where history meets future, where solitude finds connection, where two hearts found home." He paused, his blue eyes searching hers, filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. "My life before you was functional, successful even, but it was missing its light. You are my light, Alara, and I want to spend every single beat of every single day with you by your side, building a future as solid and beautiful as this place." He knelt then, not on one knee, but with both knees in the soft sand, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box carved with the delicate image of a lighthouse. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a ring. It wasn't a dazzling diamond, but a simple silver band, intricately engraved with a tiny lighthouse and a single luminous pearl. "Will you, Alara Thorne, be my lighthouse keeper for life? Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Alara's eyes, hot and sweet. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a testament to everything they had built, everything they had become. It was a promise not just of love, but of partnership, of shared purpose, of a lifetime of uncharted waters navigated together. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh yes, Liam, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, the cool silver a perfect fit, the pearl gleaming like a captured drop of moonlight. He rose and pulled her into a fierce, tender embrace, kissing her with a depth of feeling that spoke volumes. The world for a moment faded away, leaving only the two of them, the lighthouse standing sentinel, and the vast, beautiful ocean. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held at the lighthouse the following spring, just as the first wildflowers burst into bloom around the cliffs. Mrs. Gable baked a tiered cake adorned with sugar seashells, and Old Man Hemlock played his accordion, filling the air with joyful, slightly off-key tunes. They exchanged vows in the community space upstairs, the sunlight streaming through the windows illuminating their faces. Alara wore a simple, elegant gown that flowed like the ocean, and Liam, a sharp suit that still hinted at his casual charm. Life in the cove settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and wonderfully new. Alara continued her work as an artist, finding new inspiration in the vibrant life that now pulsed through the lighthouse. Her paintings, once imbued with a quiet solitude, now sparkled with the joy of connection, depicting lively scenes of community gatherings and children playing on the beach. Liam, rather than returning to his city development projects, found himself drawn deeper into the cove. He started a small consulting firm, specializing in sustainable restoration for historical properties, allowing him to stay rooted in the place that had captured his heart. They lived in the keeper's cottage, its rooms now filled with their shared belongings, their laughter, and the quiet comfort of their love. The lighthouse wasn't just a project, it was their home, their legacy, a living testament to their journey. In the evenings, after a long day, they would often climb to the lantern room, watching the sun set, its last rays painting the sky in a breathtaking display of color. One evening, years later, with the gentle patter of rain against the glass, Alara leaned against Liam, their hands intertwined. Their hair was streaked with more silver, their faces etched with the gentle lines of time and shared experience. Below, the lighthouse beam swept its reassuring arc across the dark waters, a symbol not just of guidance, but of unwavering presence. "Remember when you first came here?" Alara asked, her voice soft, a smile playing on her lips. "I thought you were going to tear it down." Liam chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And I thought you were the most fiercely protective, beautiful enigma I'd ever encountered." He squeezed her hand. "Who knew a lighthouse could lead me to my greatest adventure and my greatest love?" Alara looked out at the vast expanse of the ocean, the rhythmic sweep of the light a comforting pulse. The lighthouse, once a beacon of her solitary existence, was now more than just a shared legacy. It was the very heart of their life together, a testament to a love that had weathered storms and celebrated sunshine. It was deeply personal, beautifully communal, and endlessly illuminating. With Liam by her side, her hand in his, she knew that every beat of her heart, every moment of their shared future, was exactly where she was meant to be. The light of the lighthouse and the light of their love would shine on, forever guiding them home.